Is that my cue? Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wastewater Committee meeting of Monday, June 24th for the City of Ione. At this time, roll call.
Member Atwood,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rapp.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, it's public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none. We don't do Zoom on this, do we? I don't think. It's anybody on Zoom? Okay, go ahead on Zoom. Oh, public comment on Zoom. Okay. We'll close public comment, move on to the regular agenda, which is, I might change this around if that's okay. First item is compliance of Regional Water Quality Control Board letter. Do we need Catherine for that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's status of the West Yost contract. Do we need Catherine for that?
So Number
Okay.
2 and number 6, we're going to try to do at the next council meeting.
Okay, so you want to pull 2 and pull
2 and number
6?
Yes.
Is that agreeable with the council, with the
That's
board? Okay,
As long as it comes at the next council meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
that's next week. Wow. Okay, response from Sutter Creek ARSA regarding the overdue payments.
Well, as you can see, some of the emails I've submitted to you, they're going to have an ARSA meeting this Thursday. So me and Tom had a conversation today, and I said it's of the utmost importance that they pay the bill that's due first, prior to any more cooperation happening. So he said he would do his best to do that, and I think they will, because I basically told Tom that we have a very, very good opportunity right now to really collaborate and do some things together, because of the fact that rather than Sutter Creek spend millions and millions of dollars that may or not have, it's better to collaborate with the City of Ione to help us, improve our situation over here. So I think he's open to that. And so I think we're going to work closely together. We have been meeting every month. The last meeting we had was very good. All the parties attended. There was good communication. So the communication, sharing of information is moving forward. So I'll know by the 27th, this Thursday, whether we got the payment. So
Okay.
they're supposed to have that meeting.
I was a little concerned about their budget that they
Yes.
released.
Yes.
Didn't
So,
include that.
yes,
So you'll understand my skepticism.
yes, we'll see. Because I said, other than paying the bill due, they can't expect cooperation. So, anyway, that's the report.
Okay, and so in that, we also got a letter as well
Yes.
for those things. So I'd like to address a couple of things on the letter.
We got those
If
already.
I could. Do you want me to go first, or do you have any? Okay. So number one, we got a letter from the manager of ARSA saying that he couldn't make the meeting tonight because it's City of Sutter Creek has a meeting, but he had a couple of things that he wanted to point out. One of them was the water balances. Says we have a lot of water we need to dispose of this summer. Henderson, our largest reservoir, currently has 155 acre feet. I'm going to paraphrase this. And Preston is 56 acre feet. We are expecting to dispose of another 50 acre feet before switching over to CDCR. Once both parties reach 250, we hope Ione will switch back to get rid of the full 350 that ARSA has. And he goes on to say the reason we're holding water in Henderson is because if Ione doesn't take the water, then they have no ability to dispose of it once it gets into Preston. So to address that section, first of all, I believe he's also trying to drain Henderson. That's what he's saying. They need to do their repairs. I don't know why he just doesn't drain Henderson to Preston right now, because it's 155 in Henderson and 55 in Preston, and Preston holds 235. So we could get rid of all of Henderson into Preston. It should have been done 2 weeks ago. And then they can start their under drain work. Because what I'm afraid of is when I've spoken to them in the past, is this a 6-month project? So if they don't start in June, they're not going to be done until, the rains are already coming. So I'd like to see or reach out to Tom and ask him, why don't you just do that, drain all of Henderson? He might have to keep some for his farmer, Hoskins. But why don't they just drain it now? And I asked him how much they could drain and what time period, because it doesn't give an amount in the report. But so that's.
Did you talk to Tom?
Yeah, so I was speaking with Arsa today.
Come on up, sir. Yeah, please.
So, speaking with Arsa today, an operator at Arsa, his only concern about draining Henderson was putting too much water down in the Preston Reservoir and being stuck with it. But doing calculations on the acre footage of what we're going to use, we're projected to use about 170 more. So they can definitely do that. I'll get in touch with them if you guys want and let them know what we have left to take, and they can drain Henderson if they need to for the project.
Yeah, because I think I sent you this a couple of months ago. This is what the golf course used to typically uses. So they're going to use 90 acre feet in July, 90 acre feet in August.
Yeah.
That's got rid of everything that Arsa has. I'm not sure what their sludge levels are like in Henderson, but
Yeah.
when they hit 40 acre feet in Preston a couple of years ago, they ran out of water. So, but we could certainly take all of Arsa's water, which would put us at the 300, I think. So
Yeah, we'll be at 272 by around the 1st of August, and that leaves us with, nothing.
Okay.
So yeah.
okay. So that was that item there, number one. Number two, they're saying that they do their VOC testing and they send that in, and there's just some toluene, or however you say that in there. Then they also mentioned what George just said about the payments, that they're going to have a board meeting and they're going to address the payments. And they also mentioned the dissolution of Arsa is in progress, should be complete within 3 to 6 months, with the city of Sutter Creek as the successor organization. There should be no operational difference is what they say. So that's moving forward. And then they also finally say, if Ione is planning upgrades to the tertiary plant that have a cost impact on Arsa or the city of Sutter Creek, we would like to be involved in planning as early as possible, which is, of course, a natural thing to ask for. And the city of Sutter Creek is engaged with firms to plan the future of their plant currently and coordinate, and plans will benefit all of us, which is very, very true. So those are the things that I think, thank you for reaching out to Arsa, that we need to get a hold of. And I believe that's all of item number 3. Did you have anything
Nope,
to add on
you
that?
covered all my pieces.
Okay. And so at this time, I'll take public comment on item number 3. Anything on Zoom, item number 3? Okay. Item number 4, status update on the tertiary plant to include, I think we need Kathy for this, any and all testing both influent and effluent to and from tertiary, and B, the water balances for Arsa and CDCR. The water balances,
Got Arsa, we don't have CDCR.
Arsa just posted on their website, and also the 155 and the 55. So we haven't got any.
Do we have anything from CDCR?
I don't think so.
Like, do you know what's in their reservoir, like CDCR? Okay, maybe we could just find out this week. That would be great. Okay, the other thing concerns me with regard to Arsa is that they're only putting out 330,000 gallons a day from Sutter Creek, which is a third of an acre foot roughly. So they could basically never catch up, to 3 days to get an acre foot. And then I don't know what they have for evaporation and so on and so forth. But I think that once they drain Henderson and Preston, it's going to be empty I don't think they're going to be able to get any more water in there. So, but that's their operation. So we're going to reach out to CDCR and get their water balance.
Okay, so he's going to go over number 4.
You're going to, okay. And Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah.
Go over the rest of number 4.
Yeah, number 4 was all testing influent and effluent for our tertiary, and so far so good. Before me, I have 5 different VOC reports so far, and the only thing popping up on it is chlorine. And that's typical when you're pulling your samples out of your chlorine contact basin. So everything's good so far.
Right.
Does anybody keep these? I printed these out for.
I'll take them.
Yeah.
Actually read those, so they're. Okay, any public comment on item number 4? Okay, seeing none. Move on to item number 5. Review of updates to tertiary wastewater treatment plant costs by current operator versus outside contractor. I think
Justin will have.
Justin, again.
Okay, so as we were discussing at the last council meeting of doing it in-house, the quote from an outside contractor came in at 103,000, 104,000 actually for just for the labor and the materials, and then for the instrumentation itself came in at 152,000. So 255. And so what we proposed is we are at $179,028. So we cut it down significantly from where the quote from the outside contractor was. It was very vague on the outside quote. Didn't go into detail what the instrumentation was, which is concerning for us here, the ones that are operating it. I want to know and I want to be familiar with the type of instrumentation we're going to be installing. So yeah, we have six turbidity meters, 4 universal 4 to 20 flow paste chemical feed pumps, 4 prominent skids for those, 8 sampling pumps, and then we have a prominent DAC total chlorine analyzer. Now that's the most important thing on here because that has to do with our Title 22. We need to connect that to SCADA. We need to have the trace study done so we know where to set it as flow paste for its parts per million for the chlorine dosage. Once we're on track with that, we are Title 22 compliant. So that's, the main one on there. But other than that, yeah, everything else for 179,000 as opposed to 255. Any questions on that?
Yeah, just once you get the chlorine injection system in, what's the lead time before the regional board signs off on the Title 22? Is it like a couple of months or, it's up to them, I guess, but.
Yeah, I'll be calling Kenny at the state board the next day and
Right.
just say, hey, you want to come, check this out. Yeah.
Okay, so once it's in, they come do an inspection and then they'll stamp the Title 22 report.
Exactly. We currently have one put in place that was put in there last summer by Waterstone, and we'll be putting another one in, and one will read from the front of the contact tank and the back of the contact tank, giving us compliance.
Right, and so while you're up there.
Yeah.
Obviously we got to get the chlorine one done right away.
Right.
Because that's holding us up the expensive Title 22 report. So can we phase in the rest of it, or does it really need to be done this budget cycle, or?
So there are.
Recommendation?
Yeah, there are. So my recommendation is go with the most important things at the moment, being the chlorine analyzer and also the labor to replumb in all of our lines. Everything's clogged there from just years of just turning that plant off and things, gunking up. And also the pumps. We are wasting a lot of money on feeding chemicals without it being regulated by, the automation and talking to it.
Right.
So that's wasting, thousands every 2 weeks because we can't regulate the amount of flow of chlorine and polymer to our system. So those are like the most immediate, and then the analyzers too. If we do want to go down that route of breaking it up with a budget, yeah, I will definitely recommend certain things, moving forward. Mm-hmm.
So this is the near-term instrumentation improvements that Catherine was talking about. Then they also break out the SCADA upgrade design.
Yeah.
You're only talking about the upgrades.
Yeah, I
You're
can
not
talk- I
talking
can-
about the SCADA
No,
design.
I'm not talking about SCADA. If you,
Okay.
I could briefly talk about that if you'd like, but I think Catherine was gonna do the main.
She's got it on her
Yeah.
slides.
Okay.
So you're looking at a cost, labor, parts, everything for 179
Yes,
versus the 255.
versus the 255, yes. And with the 179, that's with instrumentation that I'm familiar with. I know it'll work, as opposed to whatever they wanted to put in.
Right, well, you
They
had,
they didn't list it,
they
yeah.
didn't give you any indication of what it was. And do you have a written estimate and a written for
Yes, I
all
do.
of that, you
Yes, I
can
do.
submit to us?
Would you like these two? I can give you the outside quote with our quote.
That's before I negotiate it down.
Yeah, well, yeah, I just want to see it. Then we'll give it to you and you can wreak havoc with it.
Would
think
you like
like-
these?
Yes, please.
Okay.
This is the beginning of the negotiation. And you have this, George.
602.
We'll get a copy for you, Dominic.
All right.
Uh,
questions?
Yeah, you want to touch on the SCADA upgrade
Sure.
design that you,
Sure. So, questions I'm going to have for West Jose is if the SCADA scope of recommendation is a requirement or, for compliance issues. I know a big thing these days is cybersecurity. I mean, I get a lot of wastewater feeds on my news feed, and it's always about somebody getting hacked at a wastewater plant. So it's a big deal these days. So I know that's top of the list right there. But I really want to dissect what we're doing here. I know everything's out of date there. I've seen it for myself and I'm working with it. But I have my IT guy coming on Friday and we're going to do a full walkthrough and I'm going to get a quote from them of what the things that I think are immediate and, long-term, because for what they're proposing, the scope of work exceeds 450. I mean, that can go up to $1 million. So I'd really like to take a long look at it, just like I did with the instrumentation. I mean, that's been the course of 4 months, so I'd like to take some time on this and also pick the brain of West Jose when I'm around them, when they're here. So, yeah,
okay, sounds like a reasonable request and I think you ought to do it.
cool. Will do.
Why don't you tell me about the flow meter? What's the status on the flow meter?
Yeah, we like I said the last council meeting, I am currently doing the math problem every day to figure out how much flow is going through. George just approved our flow meter. So we had last year budgeted and approved for 11,000 on a mag meter. We are not going to do that project after all, so we've now saved 11,000 and we're putting this propelled flow meter on our tertiary effluent going to the golf course, and that's going to cost around $9,500. So we're cutting back some money and we're putting it in where it's more necessary and immediate. So, yeah.
And when will that be in?
So I just got it approved and I reached out to the company. Should start next week. Yeah,
Okay.
they're overnighting the new meter so we can get that going. I
It's
want
very
to,
important.
yeah, I want to be able to keep track of what's going out of there, Yeah, it's little things like that. So,
Okay, thank you very much.
yes.
And Kathy Stone is on Zoom. if you need-
Okay, let's just finish. Is Kathy part of number 4?
Testing, we did that,
Is-
we did 4,
There's Catherine Geese right here.
Okay,
She's walking in right now.
5.
oh, we were on 5, yeah.
By the bell, right?
I'll take the public comment then on number 5. Any public comment on 5? Going once? Okay. All righty, and then Kathy, welcome Kathy. And we can,
Some other agenda items.
yeah, we just bounced around the agenda. And so now we can go back to
Number 1.
number 1. Would you like 2 minutes to keep your breath? Yeah, well. You want to have a couple of minutes? We
I
can,
just need a minute to,
okay,
maybe I have a presentation.
okay. Let's take, we'll just take a 5-minute break. We're moving along because you got a great chairperson here.
Can you guys hear me?
Not at all.
There, but I did send out your presentation.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we have the paper.
I think you got someone on Zoom.
Okay.
How come we had a slide
Give me a minute to
presentation?
pull up my,
We tried, Andrea and I and Jody
I
tried,
couldn't do it, okay.
got everything else, but
Can you guys hear me?
Somebody on Zoom has a question?
Yeah, it's me. It's Kathy.
Oh, Kathy.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a way I could see the presentation.
Oh,
well, I can.
I can
Yes,
put it
yeah.
on the splash drive.
Get here in the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. Great.
We will make sure that you get the handout if you
I
can't
can-
see the
I can
presentation.
email it to
Okay,
her.
perfect. Yeah, I've been on the call, so I just wanted to let you guys know if you had any
Right.
questions. But thank you.
Actually, Janice is going to email it to you as well. So
Okay, thanks, Janice.
thank you.
Getting special.
It's not the only one that I skipped, but I lost my way. Yeah, one. Pulled two and six.
Six are pulled.
So we got one. We did 4 and 5, right?
4 and 5.
Okay, so we just got one.
This we sort of touched on, but. not
And 1,
really.
6. Oh, well, 6 is pulled, right?
6 is pulled. So really all we have is Catherine. But, this one is. the big one.
Yeah.
So this one is 255.
Which one? This one?
One.
I know it's
Now
gotta be one.
1.
We can do.
This one, you'll see what's what, and why.
But wait, I mean.
That's a lot.
Nothing doesn't grow on tree.
No,
I know, just about everything on the planet tried to keep me from being here on time, so. Apologize for you guys. I mean, appreciate you guys being flexible.
no problem.
We will mail you the fine.
You and the regional board, right? All right, let me know when you're ready. I'm ready.
Well, Jason and Janice.
Oh, perfect. You guys want to try to put the presentation on the screen or
No, I think
it's fine? Okay.
I don't think we can do it.
Everybody got one of these, so. And Deer Creek. It's completely dry. And it was flowing like 2 weeks ago. I mean, it was up to the
Yeah,
road.
really.
Now there's nothing,
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
By the way, your name tags are switched.
Oh, your knee.
So we're not on TV, so.
I think everybody figured that out.
Some of us were confused.
I asked Miss Lefany to, if she was available to do a special meeting, let's say,
Or.
no.
Mm. Stay.
No, I got 2 partial.
At 6? That's fine.
6 to 6:05.
Yeah, that's fine.
Andy can't do it in here.
That's fine.
Okay, we are back in session. Okay, this time we're back to item number 1, the compliance of the Regional Water Quality Control Board letter presentation by West Yost Engineering.
All right, thank you. So as you guys are probably aware, the city received 2 letters from the regional board in the last month or so. One related to the CalRF and the Title 22 report, and then the other was, general wastewater treatment plant compliance concerns, so related to the pond-based treatment system. Just kind of high level, nothing in these letters we didn't already know about. But just kind of putting it all in writing so we can talk about what that means kind of as we go through this. But so I'm just going to go through the letters, talk a little bit about, the status of each item, and per George's direction, we have already prepared a draft response to the Title 22 letter that's due July 1st. The other letter didn't have a specific date for response other than get all this stuff done as quickly as possible. And as you see, as I go through the presentation, I think the next step is a formal letter response. There's a couple things I think that we need to discuss with them and figure out a path forward. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then I just want to circle back on other critical path items that are not necessarily addressed in these letters, but I don't want to lose sight of as we move through all this stuff. And then just open it up for question and discussion. So with the Title 22 report, just a little bit of history, and this is sort of the first slide here is summarizing what was in their letter that they submitted in December 23rd, 2022, the order to develop the updated engineering report for the CalRF and the golf course. They gave a whopping 3 months to develop that document, which I think all things considered was completely unreasonable. But I think also at the time, I don't think they appreciated what they were asking you guys to complete. Right away, I was not involved right away. I think you guys were in the process of transitioning to Amy becoming the city manager, and there was a lot going on. And so I think she reached out to me, I want to say like February of 2023 and said, hey, what's all this stuff? What's going on? And so we started talking about it. And then, and I knew at the time that she was, having discussions with the regional board staff about timeline and what was needed. That ultimately culminated in us meeting with the regional board in March, and there were some conversations going on there. So there was a lot going back and forth during this March period. It wasn't like you guys weren't being responsive, bottom line, and they acknowledged that. But now they're saying this is 455 days late, which is true. And I will also note that the regional board, we had several stakeholder meetings over the last year. These staff were at those meetings. They're very aware of what was been going on. So it's not like they've just been sitting in the dark. But the letter just says that by July 1st to submit an updated progress and then submit the Title 22 report as quickly as possible, forthwith. So just kind of reiterating a little bit, and all of this again is documented in the draft letter. If you guys have probably read it by now, that the city manager was communicating with the board that the March deadline wasn't, realistic at all. In May, we did meet with the regional board and Division of Drinking Water. And at that time, Division of Drinking Water staff made it clear that they had concerns about the CalRF plant itself being compliant with Title 22. That, is kind of a lot of the information predated current regulations and requirements, including the need for this tracer study. They were very concerned about how the chlorination system was operating. They were really wanting to see that documentation, and they made it clear that the first step was to develop this tracer study protocol that outlined not just how are you going to run a tracer study, but how does this whole chlorination system run? What are the alarms? What are the controls? We need all that information to approve this protocol is what they said. They also brought up that the mapping of the golf course facilities were inadequate, and they wanted to get a more up-to-date electronic GIS-based map of the system.
That would be nice.
Yes, yes. And now you have one. So congratulations. So during this meeting, based on this whole conversation, we said, realistically, this process of getting the protocol developed, approved, and then completing a Title 22 report once everything is done, it's going to take us at a minimum till the end of this year. They kind of said, okay, that seems reasonable. We went on our merry way. And then we ultimately came to the council, presented the scope of work. The task order was approved in July, and the work effectively began then. So the Title 22 report elements, there's really, I'd say like 6 elements, and then the report itself. And so the golf course mapping, that was the GIS mapping I just alluded to. That's already been completed. All that work's been done. It's been documented. It's ready to go. The tracer study got, lack of a better word, sidetracked a bit when we went out to visit the plant in August, shortly after the contract was awarded. We first reviewed the O&M manual. The intent was to say, this is what the O&M manual says is out there. Let's go out there and look at it and confirm it all exists. We got out there and confirmed it did not exist. And that kind of opened a can of worms. We said, hey, this initial scope was really just to kind of say, yep, check the box. It looks like now what we really need to do is do a more in-depth investigation, figure out what exactly is there, what is no longer there, and what do we need to do to get to where we're, compliant with Title 22. So we recommended that the city, issued additional task order us to complete that investigation, which we did in the fall of last year, which led to the recommendations for the near-term instrumentation improvements and the long-term SCADA design upgrade project. And I'll circle back to those. So once we get those done, then we can draft the protocol, because then that's the information we need to document that the system is compliant with Title 22. And these are the controls, and this is how it's run, which is what DDW said needs to be in that protocol before they will approve it. So all of that's been on hold to get that process done. So that's that. The cross-connection testing, that's at the golf course, where we just assure that there's no connection between the drinking water side and the recycled water side. That's been complete. The overspray study was, again, to remind you guys, when we went out to do the mapping, there was some observed closeness between the golf course and some of the residences. We said we need to make sure there's some good BMPs in place to ensure that there's no spray, best management practices in place to ensure there's no spray into people's yards. That study was complete. The site work on that was complete. But the next step on that, the final step on that piece, is to basically develop the recommended modifications, develop the best management practices or BMP monitoring program, and provide the training so that the ongoing management of the golf course ensures that over the long term, we don't end up kind of where we were, where sort of like things got forgotten and next thing you know, spray is going into people's yards or close to people's yards. And then finally, coordination with CDCR and ARSA. The report, and this was really kind of the whole crux of what the regional board thought we could do in 3 months, this last bullet, which is just getting the information from CDCR and ARSA that says, these are our dischargers, this is their contribution to their flow, including their industrial sources, and all of that information, which is a pretty minor part, as you can gather from this whole effort. And then finally, with all of that, that all gets documented in the Title 22 report. So like I said, in August 2023, when we did our initial visit, we determined that instrumentation and control system needed attention. And that's what's kind of put the delay on most of the work. So the third kind of track of this slide, I did some color coding just to give you guys a sense of like everything that's out there. So the green items are under contract and complete. The blue items are under contract, but they are not yet complete. So the tracer study we can't complete until we get the near-term instrumentation and SCADA upgrade complete. And the best management practices and monitoring for the overspray is also not currently under contract. Those three items were the items that were brought to City Council in March following my visit here and during the transition period that were not approved. So those are the three outstanding items that are kind of in waiting right now. The cross-connection testing is complete, overspray, and then of course, just completing the coordination and Title 22 report as we get the rest of the information. That's all under contract, but we just can't move forward until we get the required details. So just to dive a little deeper, so everyone fully understands the tracer study and the need for these instrumentation improvements. So the purpose of the tracer study, which is really the heart of the delay here, is to confirm the capacity of the chlorine contact tank, to confirm that the plant can treat up to that peak flow amount that it is designed to do. When we met with the golf course and the operators back in August of last year, everyone said, we need to do this outside of irrigation season. Like this can't interrupt our delivery of recycled water or whatever. So it needs to happen, can't happen inside the irrigation season. So at that point we were like, okay, well, we've got time. We can try to get it done, over the goal was to try to get as much of the instrumentation done so that we could actually do it this coming November. That's what we've been working towards, with the work plan that we've been presented. One issue that I do want to point out, because this was raised and we haven't really been able to nail it down because there's been kind of bigger fish to fry. But it is that when the flow leaves the chlorine contact basin, we're going to need to figure out how to transfer it to the plant drain system at Calref using some kind of temporary pumping. There's not the diversion is upstream of the chlorine contact basin, basically within the system. So that's not going to work. And then once we get into the drain system, it'll pump to the return system over to the wastewater treatment plant. But coming into that system, between the flow coming through the chlorine contact basin and what's coming into the plant, that's going to happen at a low flow time for the plant. So all of that has to be coordinated, may require the city rent some pumping equipment. Once we get a little bit closer to actually doing the test, we will come back and talk to you about it. Again, it's not a change in our scope, but I do want you to be aware that there's a cost there that hasn't really been accounted for yet. Because we need to sit down with Waterstone and kind of figure out exactly how we would do it. And we just haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. And then finally, once we get everything going, we need to do the protocol. And we need that INC improvement information so we can finalize it. So the near-term project that was recommended is really critical for reliable operations of the plant. You guys have probably heard about it now. It involves installing a second chlorine residual monitoring point on the chlorine contact basin. That is the most critical for the Title 22 report and doing the tracer study. But in addition to that, the missing turbidimeters, the ability to dose chlorine using the SCADA system from the original chlorination system, not from a tote next to the chlorine contact basin, and the ability to dose coagulants and other chemicals, again, from the SCADA system. So pretty basic upgrades, but bringing the plant up to where it was originally meant to be. So all of those improvements, those are things that I know Waterstone has been looking at doing. At the time, we got a proposal from Telstar to do everything. Their proposal did come back quite a bit more than what we thought it would be. That was partially, they said, because every time, frankly, they've gone out there to do work, they find there's wires missing, there's more things missing than what appears on the surface. And so they went out and spent the time and said, this is what it's going to take for us to kind of do all the things you're saying. And it was about $250,000. So I put a range in here just to kind of, because at the end of the day, it'll probably come somewhere within that range. So we do have that estimate that was provided back in March, I believe. And then I know that Waterstone has been working to develop an alternative proposal to try to come up with a more efficient way to get that work done. But ultimately, from our perspective for the Title 22 report, it needs to be like committed to, complete, documented that this is done, and documented that the SCADA system and the instrumentation are working the way they were originally intended, so we can document that in the Title 22 report. So that's that item. The longer term SCADA upgrade, so that is, the original kind of driver for that was that the regional board was adamant, or DDW is adamant, that you need to have chlorine residual monitoring in and out of the chlorine contact basin continuously. Both of those need to be connected to alarms that are triggered, documenting that you're not achieving adequate chlorination. The existing SCADA system does not have a second IO for another chlorine residual monitoring point. So that near-term project, what that would involve would be to just put a temporary local readout on the influence side, just to kind of get us closer to where we need to be. And then the city would have to document this longer term. But sort of the bigger picture there, though, is, the computer system is 35 years old now. PLCs are out of date. Everything's past its useful life. So it all just kind of comes to a head of like, this whole system just needs to be brought up to date. And we can deal with the chlorination system, we can deal with all of the new instrumentation that's coming in, get everything where it needs to be, then hopefully, and working close with Waterstone to really get the system fully automated the where it needs to be. So that's the intent of the SCADA upgrade project. The total estimated budget for that is a $1.5 million project. The council saw the proposal for the design services back in March. That was the $450,000 contract for the design services. And that's what that project is. Finally, the overspray and best management practices. So as I'm sure you remember, we talked about there are different ways you could comply with this overspray. You could build fences, you could put blockages up, you could just, completely create a brown space between the properties, or you could develop this BMP strategy. City said, BMP strategy sounds great. We want to keep the golf course looking nice. Let's go with that. We did the overspray study, part of that work. That was, again, one of the items that was brought in March to complete the entire BMP recommendation, do the training for the golf course and the city staff so that it could be managed. And again, that was not awarded. So that work just has been on hold since then. We did end up splitting that up at the time because we were trying to minimize cost per fiscal year. So there was the training portion was actually was not in the March proposal. It's a pretty small amount, like an additional 10, 15,000. But we had, the original intent was, let's do the BMPs, let's get that part done. We'll do the training in fiscal year 24, 25, again, just to kind of keep costs per fiscal year as low as possible. So you didn't see the total cost for that item in March. And then finally, just noting that, getting the data from CDC ARSA, back when all this started, we did reach out to both facilities. ARSA did provide us with the information we need. They have a compliant Title 22 report for their system, so we're able to just use that. CDCR did not provide us with any information back at the time. So that we do need to circle back with them. And I think with this letter, which explicitly states if they want to be part of the city system, they must provide that data, should get them motivated. Because I think the last letter was a little vague on what their expectations were. So hopefully that will be a fairly seamless process. We can incorporate that. So right now, the timeline that we're proposing, a realistic timeline for getting everything done is here. So, I put the July date for both the near term and the long-term SCADA projects, initiating those. Obviously, that's up to the city council. And hopefully we can get some feedback today on what timeline you guys want to commit to. So I'd say this is a tentative timeline that I put in the letter as sort of this seems feasible, but again, completely up to you guys. But let's say we did start those projects in July. The near-term instrumentation should take about 3 months to complete, hopefully. The longer-term SCADA project, it's about a 9 to 12 month design, but the preliminary design phase is really what we need to get done to the phase where we say, this is what the system's going to be. These are the alarms we're going to have. This is the functionality it's going to have. So we can document that in the report. So that, again, if that were started in July, by September, we should have that information ready. So between those two pieces, we would be able to develop the protocol in the September, October timeframe, get that over to DDW for approval. I'm giving them a 3-month timeline for that. It could take a year. We don't know, frankly. But let's assume they do react and get 3 months back. So on the tracer study itself, so this kind of gets back to what I was mentioning earlier about that pumping. So if it's a very wet spring and with high flows coming into the treatment plant through March and into April, we may not have low enough flows to be able to run all the flow through the treatment plant and run another 1 MGD of tracer study through the plant at the same time. So we're going to have to be a little flexible on whether we can get it done in the spring. We will be definitely working with Waterstone to see what we think we can do. But realistically, we know that November is a much better time frame. You got your lowest flows at that time. You're not running the risk of a big rain event or something else that's going to bring the flows up. So I think what we want to present that to the regional board, say, we're going to do everything we can to try to get done in the spring, but there's things that are outside our control and it may not be able to happen until November. The BMP development, again, assuming the July timeframe, that'll get wrapped up really quickly. We're assuming the coordination with CDCR and ARSA will also happen, by the end of the year, no problem. And then finally wrapping up the report, again, is contingent on when we can get that tracer study done. But we, as I've kind of noted, and I've noted in the letter, as all these pieces are being developed, we're putting them into the report, so we're not waiting until everything's complete to do it. So we'll continue to work on the report and get the pieces incorporated as they get developed. But ultimately, everything's going to be waiting on that tracer study. So before I switch topics, maybe give you guys a minute if you have any questions about that or thoughts or comments you want to ask.
Just, obviously the instrumentation, we talked about that a little bit earlier in the meeting. I mean, that's kind of needs to happen right as soon as possible. So
Yeah.
we just got to take that to the council and have them approve it. So, I mean, I can see now that, yeah, it's holding up the Title 22 report.
Yep.
And so we're not compliant until that's done. So we really don't have any choice. If we want to be compliant, we're going to have to fund it.
Correct.
Now, the SCADA stuff, I don't want to spend that much.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to spend enough to get compliant right now and then deal with the rest in another budget.
I mean, I guess one approach could be that if we were to, we could submit a protocol and, that says this is what there is and not include the SCADA and say, this is what it is. And then the risk is they say, well, that's not acceptable. In which case you don't have a choice. Because unfortunately, I can talk to my SCADA team about this, but when we were looking at it, they were like, at a minimum, you need a brand new PLC. You don't have enough IOs to bring in the signal that they're saying you have to have. You don't have, it doesn't exist in the panel. And then because everything else is so out of date, just bringing in a new panel without updating the SCADA software is kind of not feasible. So it is sort of a difficult thing to put a Band-Aid on, unfortunately. But I think if the city is unable to do it, all we can do is document what you can do and they can respond to that.
I mean, does the entire 1.5, was it 1.5
Yeah,
million?
1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will have to, so what you're saying is that also needs to be done. That's what I'm hearing, doctor. The leg has to come off.
Yeah, it's kind of like saying, it's sort of like, I think you're running the risk with this system that you have of a, major failure.
Yeah, but it's a good thing that we've put up 10% a year into the capital replacement fund, isn't it? So that we have this money available.
It's there, it's ready to go.
That's yeah.
Hey, Dominic, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
That funding that Jody came up with on Tuesday, that additional funds, she looked at me and she goes, "You're going to want to use this for the wastewater treatment plant." And I said, "Absolutely." So can we use some of that funding for this?
What funding was
What
that?
funding was she talking about?
It's
What
the
about the
additional,
COVID funding?
what was that?
The ARPA funds?
The ARPA.
Yes. Can that be used for some of this?
Yes,
Well, it could be.
it absolutely qualifies as ARPA fund usable.
Oh, perfect. So maybe use some of that.
Yes.
Everybody wants a piece of ARPA right now.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a long line of people
There's a
waiting for our
long-
money.
Well, that's why she looked at me and she goes, "I know you're going to want some of this." I go, "You're exactly right."
Yeah, and I think the other thing that, exactly. I don't really fully, I'm technical expert. I am not an expert on the finances, but
Right.
again, this system is run by 3 different agencies. So it should not be 100% on the city of Bayonne to manage the upkeep of this plant. But that's.
That's
a
what we're
whole
working on
other
now,
can of
yeah.
worms,
So-
yes.
Yes.
But we're not going to have that done by July 1.
No. But yeah, I would say moving forward with the instrumentation, and then that's also why we obviously pulled out the design elements. Well, I guess one thing I will say was back in the spring, when we were asked to put this together, the intent was to spend the ARPA funds on it. And so part of the strategy was to complete the design by the end of this year to encumber the ARPA funds. Since that time, I had my financing team, our grant funding team from West Coast look at it. And apparently ARPA can be used for the design phase as well. So we don't need a complete design to encumber the ARPA funds. But let's just say, for example, the city were to say, let's do the preliminary design phase of that SCADA project. So we can define what it looks like and we can say, this is what we're going to build. So you can go to the state and say, we're doing these near-term things. We're going to do this long-term thing. And here's a timeline that we can do the long-term thing. It won't be done by the end of 2026, which is what I think the original intent with the ARPA funding and original approaches. But maybe you could commit to a 2028 timeline or something like that. Now, I would think that they probably would issue some kind of cease and desist order similar to the one we're about to talk about that would prescribe that timeline, say, hey, you're not compliant with Title 22. We're going to allow you to continue to operate, but you must commit to completing steps A through C or whatever by these dates. And if you don't, you are now in a position of liability. So that would probably be the alternative approach, something along those lines. But at a minimum, we have to kind of say what that future looks like. So that could be a different way to kind of keep costs down now, maybe push the pain out a little bit further. But inevitably, you're going to have to pull the Band-Aid off at some point. And I think, as we get into discussion about the treatment plan, I mean, it's obvious that that's, kind of a frustration from the regional board's part of needing to move these things forward. So I get it.
So on the SCADA upgrade and design long term, how much of this has to be completed? Is there a way to triage this down to a point that we'll do all the near terms for sake of argument?
Yeah.
And if we can triage down the SCADA piece of it,
Yeah.
I mean, and serious triage, not,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was just alluding to is like, I think what you could do is you could do like what I'm calling the preliminary design phase, which is the initial, like, this is what we will build specifically. It's going to have these alarms. It's going to have this control and do that. So out of that 450, maybe that's, I don't want to venture this, but like 100, 150, something like that. Like, this is the project, define it at like a 30% design level so that you can say, go to the regional board and say, this is what we are going to build. We clearly defined it. We're going to document in our Title 22 report. And here is our timeline that we are going to commit to completing this project. And then you'll have to commit to a timeline. And maybe let's just say that's the end of 2028. So you've got 4 years to complete it. Then at that point, the city would effectively be, again, you'd have to put that forward to them. They would respond to it if they agreed to it. Then I think you'd probably have until, let's say if you said end of 2028 and they accepted that deadline, I think you could probably complete the SCADA, kind of complete the design and construction in about 2 years. So you would be able to postpone the major project until, say, the beginning of 2026. So it'd give you another 2 years to kind of push it out. So I think you could do something like that and still pass, I guess, the giggle test, for lack of a better word, with the regional board. And you would have to probably be pointing to these other projects that we're about to get into that you've got to focus on, and you can't do it all at once. And here's your big picture timeline of all the things you're spending money on. so that they understand that you're not just kicking a can down the road for no reason.
Right.
So I think that could be an approach that we could look at, if that seemed like the right way to go. And I think to your point, maybe earlier, given where you guys are with your partners, that's another reason to kind of not take on too much right now with that site.
Can you give how long would it take you to give us your 30% scaled triage version?
I'd have to reach back out to my team, but I think they could probably prepare something well, next week is a holiday week. So maybe by like the end of July, like third, fourth week in July, we could probably get something to you. Cause I know that I was just talking to the guy that prepared the work and he's leaving on Friday and we'll be gone next week. So,
Yeah, because I think we need to have that
yep,
before we can actually say yay or nay or what.
right.
We need to see what it is we're looking at.
Okay. I think I totally understand that. And then maybe so maybe kind of back to this, from the timeline perspective for the near term instrumentation and control, do you think starting that in July is reasonable, or do you think pushing that till August is maybe a little bit more realistic?
Well, I think we're gonna recommend we push it to the council
We
for,
want to, that needs to happen ASAP.
Okay.
yeah, we need to get
and
that to the council
Okay.
right
We
away.
can afford that. That's not.
I think we can write the letter in a way, if we show the initiating the design of the long term as August, and then maybe word the letter in a way that doesn't commit to a timeline for completing the project, but just indicate that we need to get that project along far enough so that it can be documented in the Title 22 report. We can come back and revisit with them a timeline. So if we said that were initiated in August, I don't think it would probably push maybe the tracer study protocol out a few months, but I think given the fact the tracer study can't probably happen till next November, I don't think it's gonna honestly have a huge impact on the overall schedule. Does that seem like a reasonable?
Yeah, and
Approach for the letter.
it may be that we could do the tracer and you can have here November, January. I mean, it depending on how things go, we may be able to still meet those
Yeah.
deadlines, but
Yeah, exactly. I think just,
need to
yes,
see what we're actually looking at first.
totally. No, I completely understand. Okay.
Catherine, just to let you know that I've spoken to Kenny multiple times and told him about what you're doing, and we're being proactive in regards to all of this, and he's totally on board with all that. So
Good.
and so I'm listening to your speaking, and I think that you're right. Your timeline, and as long as we update him, he's very happy with the operations. And I told him how you're being proactive on doing this and the tracer study. So I think as long as we kind of keep him updated on all this, that would be beneficial on our part.
Yep. I think that's right.
Too bad he won't ever put any of that in writing for us. He only puts nasty grams in writing.
Right.
Right?
So everybody knows that's Kathy from Waterstone on the phone.
Yes. So anyway, Catherine, just to let you know that I have really been in contact with him in regards to this whole, tracer study and the Title 22 and what we're doing, and all facilitating the improvements with the turbidity meters, the analyzer, all of that. So
Perfect.
yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So then we will look from you, action item for you is to return back with your 30%.
For the proposal for the 30%, and then we will also update the letter according to these minor modifications that we just discussed.
And if you want to
Yes.
wait until the council meeting that the near-term instrumentation comes before you, to plug that in there, well, the council will have assuming of approval.
the
you could
letter
say
is due July
definitive-
1st.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now
But
we're
I
gonna
think
get
we
a meeting
can,
in.
I think we can just word it, and I think we can always say that, I think the way I have it worded right now in the letter is, this is subject to city council approval. So we're not saying 100%, it'll be like, this is when we anticipate, but that can always change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
And Catherine, just to let you know, before you showed up tonight, Justin had put forth in front of the council the Telstar proposal, and then Waterstone did provide a proposal as well.
Awesome. That's
Yes.
great.
Is there any way we can get this on the
Official
meeting
tomorrow?
for,
Wednesday.
well, or Tuesday, the Tuesday council meeting?
Yeah. You mean the letter?
The Waterstone
No,
proposal.
the Waterstone proposal.
The sooner the better, guys, because Justin just checked again. Justin was it Monday or something, and a lot of stuff has lead time. And so the sooner we can get this done, the sooner it's going to take, 2 to 3 weeks to get some of this equipment. So
And that way we can get council approval next Tuesday,
Right, and then
On-
you can legitimately say.
Yeah, there you go.
before the first.
Perfect. Kathy, just one question for you. On your proposal, are you guys still proposing that Telstar would do the programming? And you guys are just going to install the equipment?
Justin, what exactly? Because I know we were going to have, we have contractors coming in doing electrical, and then the Telstar. So was it Telstar, Justin?
Lowest bidder wins, at the moment.
Okay.
At the moment, it's Calcon.
Okay,
Yeah, they came in with a really good number, and their scope of they're gonna put our turbidity meters to communicate with our polyalum to fluctuate up and down.
perfect.
And then our chlorine analyzers, we're gonna make those communicate, of course, with our telephones compliant analyzers. So
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Okay. We may want to include just some support for us to just kind of make sure everything's all
Absolutely.
on the same page with what.
Absolutely. No, that's a great idea. So that's perfect.
So perhaps the thing would be, well,
See the
we'll
equipment,
figure it out.
see the equipment purchasing, things like
Yeah,
that.
well, I'm just thinking, that as they're doing the programming and stuff, just making sure that it's all like kind of, we know what they're doing, because we got to document it, right?
Yes.
So that's the key, is just, with, I'm not sure, because they're not going to be coming back and say, updating your O&M manual. We'll need to make sure we know exactly what's been done, and then we'll have to like coordinate that with what was in the O&M manual, and just kind of make sure that we're all working together. So we'll figure that
Absolutely. We're
out.
going to have to update that O&M. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. So
Okay.
we'll figure that out as we move forward, but this is great. Okay. So the treatment plant.
You want to take questions on this
Oh,
or for the public? And then we can do, because it's a separate item.
I'd like to, sure.
All right, but that's, so this to make sure that, George, so we're going to get the Waterstone proposal on the council meeting on the 2nd. Okay. Is there any public comment on this part of the presentation?
Gary Thomas. I live in Ione sometimes. Dominic, I was shocked. I think you about fell out of your chair as well. The 1.5 million for the upgrade, is that the PLC? Is that the SCADA?
Yeah.
What is that gonna entail?
That's everything.
Believe that there's not one port out there that for an input output port. I used to work on that stuff a long time ago in another lifetime. And I can't believe that there's not one import output port or a card or something that's not working somewhere that could be replaced or something like that. I would certainly take a look at that first. All this SCADA, all this PLC, it's changing all the time. I'm surprised yours is 35 years old. I think I heard the words. So
It's the original one.
It's the original. There's
Yeah,
there was
never
never
it's
no
it's
upgrades
changing
done.
all the time, and it's gonna change again in the future, probably. They're gonna probably be going to the industrial data collection system or so forth, so. I would be careful on how you're spending your money immediately, and if you could find an input output port on that or something that's working. It sounded like they only needed one. And I don't know, I'm not claiming to be an expert, but with all the life expectancies and everything else, you might want to ask a few more questions. And how long will this SCADA system software and everything else in the PLC be good for? 1.5 million was a shock to me too. And we've done a few at the water agency and so forth. And then you've got to talk about, when you're talking about all that, security and so forth. So, how is that going to be interacting in the future? Who's going to have access, whatever. So.
Good comments. Yeah.
at 1.5 million. Since I think it's 2017, I read that we've used $856,000 of our money to water the golf course. Why don't we get the people to pay that money that didn't pay us and didn't need to have close to it? Because you keep kicking a can down the road. I just bought some steel for the park over here. 21-foot, 4-inch galvanized pipe. I paid $362 for it. 2 years ago, I could have bought it for $61. And you keep kicking it down the can, this 11 million is going to be 22 million. Who we get elected next is going to make a heck of a difference. Thank you.
So while we're all angry, let's just get to why we're here today. We're here today spending all this money because somebody wrote articles in the newspaper that made the regional board insist that we do this Title 22 report. Okay, your friend Larry did that. We don't need to do a Title 22 report because they don't ever expire. But we're here today because the regional board now is basically putting down the hammer and saying everything needs to be brought up to code. So that's not blame the Wastewater Committee for that. That's out of our hands
Our operators.
or the operators.
$56,000. How about that?
Yeah, and we're working with our partners to, spread the cost. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, Kathy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry, the other Kathy.
Oh, sorry.
Catherine, sorry.
That's okay. All right, so moving on to the wastewater treatment plant itself. So the June 3rd letter detailed 4 key compliance issues related to the existing treatment plant. So there's the compliance with the cease and desist order, the biosolids cleanup and abatement order, and specifically the development of an impacts assessment report. There were apparently 18 monitoring reports that were missing. And then a little bit of a curveball requiring you to install effluent disinfection. We'll get back to that. Okay, so the 2014 cease and desist order, we've talked about this a number of times. Basically, there is elevated iron and manganese concentrations in the groundwater downgrading of the wastewater treatment plant. Those basically metals solubilize when there is conditions that have excessive hydraulic and organic loading. And the cease and desist order effectively required that all of the ponds, including the percolation pond 6 and 7, be lined, which effectively decimates the city's available disposal capacity. The city did line ponds 1 through 5, and pond 6 was scraped to remove the organics. There was some work done to make 6 and 7 work more effectively as percolation. And as a result of that work, the iron concentrations in groundwater have dropped. The manganese concentrations have not decreased. So our hydrogeologic team from West Coast took a look at all the history and the documents and all the reports that have been done and came to the conclusion that the cease and desist order was basically developed based on false information. Basically the scientists that did the previous paper did not account for manganese kinetics, which are very, very slow. They're very different from iron. They basically assumed the iron and manganese would decrease at similar rates, which is not consistent with hydrogeochemistry. The other thing that the cease and desist order does not account for, which we think is a very important issue, is that there may be naturally occurring conditions that influence what's happening there. So if you look at the photo there and like where the monitoring wells are, there are monitoring wells adjacent to Sutter Creek that are also adjacent to your ponds. But there are no monitoring wells adjacent to Sutter Creek that are not adjacent to your ponds. Sutter Creek and that whole area is a low-lying riverbed. It has different soil types, different conditions, and all of your background, quote unquote, background wells are outside of the influence of that. So without having a proper background well to say this is what's occurring near the creek in the floodplain, outside the influence of the treatment plant, we cannot say for certainty whether these manganese concentrations are naturally occurring or not. The other kind of issue, and this was actually brought up in discussions I've had with the permitting staff, is that if you take a look at the manganese concentrations and you go beyond just the tiny little circle that is around the treatment plant, there is no more manganese present that exceeds water quality objectives. So even if there were manganese increases caused very locally, this is a secondary drinking water standard. It's a coloration of water supply. This is the most shallow groundwater. This is like 5 feet below the surface. Nobody's drinking this water. By the time the water moves into an aquifer that people would drink, there is no manganese present. So requiring the city to line your disposal ponds to eliminate this nuisance manganese condition and effectively spend $20 million to build another storage pond somewhere else is not an appropriate strategy. These are conversations we want to have with the regional board on the city's behalf.
When? Tomorrow?
Yeah. So so some history. So we actually talked about this a year ago. And at the time, because of the Title 22 order and because of the finances within the city, the decision was made that we're going to put the cease and desist order is already 10 years old. We're going to put that on the back burner. We're going to focus on the Title 22 report because that's the issue we have in front of us in our hands with a letter that tells us we must do something right now. Focus on that. The intent was to start working on the cease and desist order this fiscal year. But the city council did actually approve West Shows to do the cease and desist order negotiation process with the regional board last year, but we never did get the task order from the city for that because of the need to, there was only so much available each fiscal year and the decision that we needed to spend it on figuring out this instrumentation issue. But again, May of last year, we said the city should pursue this. The city should employ these best management practices. We should be working towards this regional solution. And that we need to also be working with the regional board to look at the permit. What is the disposal capacity? What is the treatment capacity? And get some modifications made to bring that up and to show them the water balances and the work that's been done. So like I said, about a year ago, the city did approve the task order and the city manager decided to delay that work because of, again, only so much available in any one given fiscal year. Based on this letter, we would recommend initiating that as soon as possible. So in terms of the capacity limitations in the permit, this was also mentioned in the regional board's letter. It's interesting that there's a discrepancy between the cease and desist order and the permit with respect to what the city's required to construct. And I basically, based on my conversations, there appears to be a disconnect between what the permitting staff and the enforcement staff think is an appropriate course of action at this time. So we really need to get everybody in the same room, come to an agreement on what the path forward is, and hopefully get a new cease and desist order that aligns all of that. But the permit acknowledges that the city has percolation basins, that is a reasonable means of disposal, and that there is no need to construct additional storage, and that the city has the ability to continue using percolation disposal. The permit does require that the city define the capacity available. The 2020 report that was submitted, though, does focus on that interconnect to the golf course, which we've decided probably cannot move forward at this time. So we do, but that being said, the water balances and the work that we have done demonstrates that there's more capacity than what the permit allows. So there's room to get more capacity without connecting to the golf course.
How come that connection can't be done?
Because the agreement with the two partners does not allow for it. And if the city were to move forward with a project that brought additional water supply to the golf course, it would basically open the city up to lawsuit.
But that
So-
doesn't mean in the future that can't be something we do.
Correct, correct, but it should be done in unison with the partners, with an understanding that that we are all working together. And ultimately, like, kind of back to the vision we created, expanding the capacity of the treatment plant, using the Woodard bottom line to deliver tertiary water to other users, so that not only the city, but these other entities, everybody can have more disposal capacity. It
Well,
is
and-
just
and-
truly unfortunate that the cities, and this is something that I think the regional board needs to understand. Your current agreement basically says you cannot put a drop of water on the golf course until you can supply 100% of the flow that the golf course requires. So for a city like Ione, what do you do with your water until you get to that 100%? You have to, if you don't have percolation disposal, you have to find other storage, other reuse, and that becomes untenable. It's not feasible. Because once you've made that investment, you don't need the golf course anymore. So the only path forward really for Ione is to figure out a partnership that allows expansion of the tertiary system, so that not only can you dispose of it at the golf course, but at other reuse sites using tertiary water. To me, I don't think that there's really any other way to move forward, and that everybody has to agree that that's in everybody's best interest, and we need to let Ione in because it's in everybody's best interest.
Right. Well, and on the other side of that is the growth that may occur in Ione in the next 10 years is going to put us in a position where we're going to have to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the only, and if you can't start leveraging the golf course and the cow roof, then you might as well, I mean, frankly, abandon it, because you're gonna have to make investments elsewhere so that you can grow.
Exactly.
And that's something that I think the regional board needs to understand, the position that you're in, and that for you to move forward, you've got to get a new agreement in place. And that's the first course of action before anything else can happen.
And that's being worked on.
Yeah, wonderful. So all of these discussions related to capacity, like these are all tied together, right? So these are the conversations that the regional board needs to be made aware of. And so that we can get things moving forward in the right way. So in the biosolids cleanup and abatement order, this is something I've heard about over the few years that I've been working with the city, but I have never seen, until this letter arrived, a copy of the cleanup and abatement order. I don't believe the city actually had it anywhere in your records. I don't believe that any of the data collection that this letter required was completed. I've never seen any documentation of it. I've never seen any documentation of the photos or anything that it says.
Is this related to
The solids pile
So it was
that was
Yeah.
sitting out
Right.
there, and it was removed.
It was removed with their permission. and
With
we
their
did it in
permission,
their-
and it
in
was
their
done.
timeframe.
But they said, unfortunately, they put all these other onerous, frankly, overly onerous requirements related to monitoring and soil sampling and groundwater monitoring and writing this report that shows that you did not have any impact, that this pile, however long it was sitting there, did not have an impact. That part didn't happen, and that's what they're upset about, is the report didn't happen. The problem is the documentation required, that specifically explicitly required, I don't believe exists. So I think what we have to do is we need to go to the state and say, what we do have is we have the monitoring well data that's collected in accordance with the permit. We can evaluate that. We can document whether there's any clear observances of impacts or not, to the extent that we have information available, and we can submit a report that, as to our best of our ability, meets the requirement of this cleanup and abatement order. I think I will just say my interpretation of this is, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say that they are potentially setting the city up at this point for some kind of penalty for not completing this work. Because that is what they usually do. They first document it, and then next the penalty letter comes. So I think going to them, explaining, hey, we will do everything we can. Are we at liability here? But the city may want to consider bringing in some legal support. I know we were working with Somax, Simmons and Dunn. This is the kind of thing they could provide support with. So I would strongly suggest that after we submit this letter to the state that, and when we do meet with them in person, that possibly we also bring an attorney along to talk about liabilities and to make it clear that, we're not going to take this laying down. We're going to do what we need to do. But I just am concerned that they will try to throw the book at you, but because I've seen it happen.
Catherine, this is Kathy Stone. Are you referring to the biosolids in the drying beds?
Yeah, so when the ponds were cleaned out and lined, the solids were removed and apparently stockpiled, and I'm not exactly sure even where they were stockpiled. But they were stockpiled on the site and they were left there for some period, and it was 2019. I think it took about a year or so to get it removed, but I think it was kind of like they got a complaint, they came out. Again, this is all documented in the cleanup and abatement order, so I know as much as what's written in that document, honestly.
Okay.
But that's my understanding. About a year later, everything was removed. And the city said, great, we took care of it. But unfortunately, the cleanup and abatement had these very specific reporting requirements, and that's what they're now.
Yeah, you're supposed to report by February 19th of every year of how many biosolids are removed and where they're
This is,
removed.
yeah,
to.
no, this is beyond that, Kathy. It's actually a cleanup and abatement order that was
Okay.
received. Yeah, so it goes beyond that. It was actually like, you must clean this up, you must document you haven't impacted stormwater and groundwater and soils, and do this very specialized report that has all this extra monitoring and things associated with it. So
Okay.
it was a pretty extensive and onerous expectation for, I would say, a pretty minor thing.
Yeah, I believe that it was supposed to have been put on like a membrane and it wasn't. It was put directly on top of the asphalt.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was removed and disposed of, and I thought they'd signed off on it. But
Yeah, but I mean, I would suggest that if, as far as I know, again, this has kind of been something I've been made aware of. But I've not had
Right.
anyone be able to provide any documentation. So maybe there's some hidden records.
Oh,
there.
you're 3 city managers away.
Yeah.
You're
An
3
operation-
public works people away and 2 wastewater operators away.
Exactly.
So good luck
Yeah.
trying to find
Exactly.
anybody that knows anything about it.
So it's a little bit of throw yourself on the mercy of the regional board, say, what can we do? We can do what we can. We can provide a report. We've got groundwater monitoring data. But we don't, unfortunately, there's no photographic evidence. There's no monitoring, all these things that are here. There's nothing we
I
can
think
do.
we have, I'm
Well,
gonna find you something. I think we took pictures of it. I think
We took pictures.
Catherine, I think you
before
and
and
I
after.
can work together
I think
with.
they were submitted to
Kenny.
the regional board, yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, I think you and I can work with Kenny and Howard and, try to get this stuff taken care of.
Yep. So,
So you need a new task order to work on this
we
project.
would need a new
correct?
task order to provide the report that they're asking for.
Can you
yes.
give us
We can do that.
one?
Yep. Okay, so the missing monitoring reports, this is another one that was a little bit, I was actually not aware of. The letter does not specify what reports are missing. I do know that I have copies of reports going back to 2019 that we received from the previous operator. They are mostly complete. So if we knew what was missing, we could potentially work with Waterstone to help recreate those and get those in. So I think that's just a matter of, please tell us exactly, because again, 2 operators ago, 3 city managers ago, we don't know what's missing, but if you tell us.
We can have our city manager ask them exactly what reports they're missing.
Well, so overall, what I'm proposing is we write a letter that addresses all these items that says this is what we want to do. We want to meet with you. We want to talk about this. On this item, I'm saying we would just say, tell us what is missing and we will.
Well,
put
honestly,
them
I'd like to
together.
know, I'd like to have them tell us what we're missing.
Yeah.
And then with the letter, we can send them the missing reports.
Yeah, if they're saying
Yeah.
18 reports are missing, I'd like to know what 18.
Yeah, we
ones
need
are.
to, I mean, we,
They were DMR reports.
Diane's, right, what 18 ones are
Which
missing?
ones?
Right.
yeah, so I
Which
mean,
months, which facility?
yeah, I want to respond to them on
Right.
this with a letter, absolutely, but
Right.
if we can give them this piece of it with the simple, what reports do you think are we missing?
Right.
We can go get them, we can submit those with the
Okay.
letter, and then it's a gimme. I mean,
Yep.
then they're getting something from us, not
Yep.
saying, oh, too bad, you didn't do it again. And now
Totally.
you're asking us for more information when you should have it.
So we
So,
can reach out to them and
I-
see if they can provide that
I mean,
information
it's-
sooner than
It's
later.
simple as having either Public Works or city manager write to them and say, what reports do you feel you're missing so that we can provide?
Yep,
I mean, that's an easy question and they should have told us that to begin with.
for sure.
We were talking on the phone and talked about how, now we submit about the 15th of every month. You mentioned that, so I can give him a call tomorrow and I can talk to him and try to get that. See you guys.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And then and then once you know that, I can supply you with what I have and then we
And
can
then we'll,
see.
we'll find the
Yeah.
missing pieces.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the monthly monitoring reports?
Yeah,
I mean, they got sent up every month. So,
He said that some stopped getting sent up for a period of time.
Yeah, they said they were missing.
Or is this for
This is-
everybody?
This is for the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, so
supposedly.
all right.
It was the shortest section of the letter. It was just pretty vague. So,
Yeah, I mean,
but-
they were, so yeah, we just need to know what
Yeah.
what they're missing and we
Sounds
can
good.
provide that.
perfect. Yeah, agreed. Okay, the disinfection requirements. So this one was, I think, really.
This is a point of contention because they told us we didn't have to do
I know.
this.
Yeah, and I think that not only that, but for them to require something like that, it couldn't be just in a letter like this. It would have to be through like a cease and desist order, like something that says you're not compliant, you need to do something. So this was definitely a reach on their part. But it says, yeah, the city committed to installing the disinfection, but that was actually changed and the current permit clearly says you do not have to install disinfection. And in fact, the order that was adopted clearly says that the city does not need disinfection for groundwater protection or for the current proposed uses. So now they are making the assertion that there are elevated coliform levels in the groundwater. What I had heard was that the city was concerned that the previous consultant monitoring team that was doing the groundwater monitoring was maybe not taking good enough care to avoid contamination of samples. I did take a look at the monitoring report that was from last year. I don't have the most recent one. I asked for it this morning, but I think if we can show that, since the new firm has come on, we're not seeing the coliform hits that we used to see, that we need more time to document what we believe to be the case, that there's actually not coliform present. It's actually an artifact of sampling. And more so that, you can't just write us a letter and tell us that we have to submit disinfection when it's not part of the CDO, nor is it part of our permit.
I mean, that should be sufficient, right? I mean.
That should be sufficient, but you still should make the case that this coliform and this problem that they're
Right.
observing is not a problem, because they can come around and issue a cease and desist order that says, we think you have a problem. So I think that to the extent we can document that we don't think it's a problem would be very prudent.
All right, and that requires a task order from you as well?
That again, I mean, I think that's a pretty minor item. I think that there's sort of, if we can get the data that from the most recent permit and we can document in this letter, then that should be adequate. If it turns into something more is sort of what I'm saying. Like
Okay.
if it becomes like they want to adopt a cease and desist order, they want to do something else or keep pushing on this, then that it could turn into,
Right,
a
well,
can
then
of
it's
worms.
something bigger than that.
yeah, yeah.
So
But I guess bottom line is, yeah, we don't have any kind of task order right now associated with this because this was a non-issue up until this letter showed up.
Right, so 3 and 4 are two things that we can.
I think we can handle without any
with-
major
Without
things.
any major problem.
And then one, we already have the cease and desist order, and I think we can get that moving. And then the cleanup and abatement order, I think we need to get you a proposal for that.
So this disinfection is to disinfect the water that goes on the town field, correct?
Correct.
Right. And I have read on the regional board website that they removed the disinfection requirement
That's correct.
and they took it out of, that was part of the overhaul of
Yep.
the plant at one time.
That's right.
And it was, the requirement was disinfection and they took it out. So the regional board, I can find that. It's,
No, I
It's-
have that
yeah.
already. I've already incorporated that into the draft letter I've been working on. So, I mean, I have that information. If I can get this additional groundwater information, we
Right.
can document that, you know, this is what we think is happening and.
Further bolsters your position.
yeah,
Basically. and tells them
Exactly.
if they're reaching.
Yes, that is part of the capacity. Yep. Work. Yep. Do we want to pause for public comment on this?
public comment on, sure, why not? Public comment on this part. Hang on, you could go next. You can stay where you are, Larry. Hold on. Just let Gary. go
Gary
first.
Thomas, once again. Did I hear that right? That we can't do phasing to have the ion water make up for the tertiary plant? Is that what I'm hearing? That you can't have that phased in until ion can replace 100% of the water? Did I hear that right?
That's what you said. I don't necessarily agree with that,
I
but
don't agree with it either. Thank you. And that's
Nor do
scary,
I.
Dominic. I might agree with you twice tonight.
wow.
But, you know, when future development comes in, that needs to be called out and they might have to have a better buy-in for the tertiary treatment plant other than spreading it out onto the wealth of the whole city. Thank you.
I'd like to ask you something. I noticed they never mentioned the 16 or $17 million holding pond. That never comes up.
I mentioned it. I said that it'd be ridiculous to spend money on that when you have a percolation pond that works perfectly well.
Yeah, but the percolation pond, the only thing I got wrong with them is if you look at the Army Corps of Engineers, the bottom of this valley, our sewer plant's sitting right on top of this deepest part. So our water's gotta be going into that creek. It's impossible. And that's a fact. If you look at, we got pictures of them, the city's got them, the drawing, it runs right under the deepest part of this valley, runs right underneath our sewer plant.
Okay, so thank you. Larry, did you have a comment? Go ahead. You can stay where you are.
My friends putting something in the paper they created this need. First of all, I don't know what friends they are. But I
I didn't-
can, even if they are my friends, they didn't consult me.
The other
They didn't
Larry.
ask me for advice or any information to help them put it in the paper. But I am concerned about kicking the can down the road. Do you know the theory of future worth, the current value of the equation?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, had we just did preventive maintenance from day one to today, and just maintain this equipment so that it operated in the condition that we need to, number one, we would be doing this inspection. Number two, the total cost from day one to today, to keep it in that condition, would be far less than what it's gonna cost us to get it in that condition. You kick it down the road for another year, another 11% inflation. The value of your dollar is go down by another 11%. So I'd find a way to get the money.
I agree with you. Totally agree with you. I wish that we had been doing this 10 years ago. But I totally agree with you.
Should have been done from day one, quite honestly.
I'm not blaming anybody.
No, I get it. No, you're absolutely right. You know, the sludge pile, somebody turns in the city, right? And now we have a big fine coming our way. So it's nice and fun to turn the city in, but yeah, now we're sitting here and we got to pay a fine. So that's fine.
And he knew it.
Okay. All right.
But it's a good thing, and even though I wasn't part of it, it's a good thing they did it, because we would be sitting here looking at this problem. And they just, that the condition got in, and when it wanted 5 years down the road, imagine what that condition, that equipment is gonna be like, or what. Okay,
Yeah.
so even though it's a pain in the ass, they probably did us a favor.
Well, the fact that the maintenance on this equipment wasn't put into the original contracts is
I understand that.
malpractice, in my opinion.
Should have been part of it, should have been amazing.
Absolutely, no question. So now here we are,
Well, this
at the end of it.
So you're right, have to go from here, have to fix.
right? That's what we gotta do. We gotta fix it. We can't just kick it down the road anyway. The road, we are at the end of the road here.
Go ahead, Andy.
But just for a comment on sludge. Now, you paid a contractor a lot of money to do the job. Don't you think he should have known what he was doing when he took that sludge out? I mean, if you get the book and read it, it'll tell you you can't put sludge on the ground unless you got some kind of a barrier down. So the thing that scares me is when we've been hiring people to do stuff that don't really know what they're doing, I guess.
Well, they're all gone now.
Huh?
They're all gone.
Yeah, but make sure you don't get them again, like our operators down there. The last operator, I don't know what he did. He never fixed anything, or he never come to the city meeting and said, hey, I need to spend $500,000 to fix all this stuff. He just let it go to hell. And we were paying him to do that. So that's the only thing that scares me, it's beyond, it's past and we got some good operators and give them the money to fix it. We don't have no choice. And the thing is, all the money we're spending down there is the other two partners chipping in.
That's what we're working on.
I mean, I'd either tell them to get on the pot or get off, one or the other. I mean, isn't there anything in the contract that says they have to? Well,
Not at this time, but work on a new contract. So we're trying to get everybody, what we're trying to do is to get everybody to pay.
I know that.
Any
but-
new development comes in, there's a buy-in for them.
But I'm just saying, I hope
So-
this stuff doesn't happen again, because whoever wrote that contract, oh, he must have just, nobody read it or anything.
Whoever agreed to it, really,
Yeah. Only two things that are gonna save us is we got some new operators down there, and we got a smart city manager after, I don't know how many. Don't get a big head, no. But he knows what money is, that's the main thing, because, and, let's see what else. I hope we gotta hurry up and find out if they're gonna pay. If they're not gonna pay, you guys should just kick them off of the contract. Because it probably says in there, they have to help pay for the maintenance.
Okay.
Well, who wrote the damn thing? I'd go after them.
there's a question.
It was written in 2007, so thanks for the comments. Okay, let's move on. Got to get
Okay, so just
this wrapped up.
because, we don't want to lose sight of everything else. We just have a couple more slides. So in addition to, we talked about the SCADA system, but ultimately, right, the entire Calra facility is 30 years old. Most equipment has about a 20-year life. SCADA systems have about a 15-year life. And this is a 25-year-old plant. So the scope of work that you guys was put before you was part of the $450,000. Actually also included a condition assessment of the CalRIF to develop the CIP, so that not just this is what the SCADA is going to cost, but this is like all the equipment replacement and everything that's needed for the next 10 years or 5 years for the plant, so that it has another 25 years of life in it. So that work, we did, there's a bit of a kerfuffle. We did actually do the inspection, but the documentation associated with that condition assessment work has not been complete. So I would recommend that the proposal that you asked me for with the preliminary design still include that condition assessment piece, because having that report for this negotiation with your partners to say, for this CalRIF to continue for the next 20 years, this is the investment collectively we all need to make. You need that information. So this is a list of projects that were defined by others in 2020 that was believed to be needed. They assigned a $1.6 million cost for all these projects. We just, knowing what we've learned through the work we have done, estimate that the work needed there at the CalRIF is probably closer to $4.5 million. That plus the near-term instrumentation, and then just wrapping up the Title 22 report, getting a new permit. We believe the 5-year budget for the CalRIF facility is about 4.6 million, again, to be paid by partners, to be confirmed through the condition assessment work and everything that needs to be done. But we gave these numbers to help support developing the rate increase. On the wastewater treatment plant, we talked about the cease and desist order. The thing we have not talked about, but have talked about in the past is the headworks and the influent pump station and the associated electrical system improvements needed at the facility. That is a project that's probably been on the books for 10 or 15 years now. Kicking down the road. We had been talking about and envisioning the design for that starting this coming fiscal year. So that's something that the city council is going to need to decide the timing on when you want to do that project.
And Catherine, is that a helicive?
Sorry?
Is that a helicive that you're proposing?
I mean, at this point, there's no definition of what the new headworks and influent pump station would look like. There's been no design done or anything.
Okay.
So that would be to be determined. But something is needed, as I know you are well aware.
Yes, we've discussed that, and I think a helicive would be
Yeah.
optimal for that.
I think that would be and so the dollars here for the headworks and the associated electrical upgrade, that was developed again by others. We just brought it to today's dollars.
Right.
We've not looked at that. And then I threw, the 900,000, that's for that's the permitting. That's also the planning, the long range planning, figuring out this regional solution, all those things over the next 5 years. So that's the other 6.3. So the total recommended 5-year CIP was the $11 million. And again, I believe you guys have seen that as well as part of the rate study work.
Mhm.
So that's that.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think the thing to remember here is that we have a 75-year-old wastewater treatment plant that has had very little investment. It has zero capital replacement funds put away. That I've lived here almost 30 years. The tertiary plant is 30 years old. It's met its lifespan. The good news about the tertiary plant, whatever money we're going to spend, is that the residents of Castle Oaks paid for that tertiary plant. The existing residents of Ione didn't pay for that. So you've got most of the bones of a pretty good tertiary plant at basically, paid for by the Castle Oaks people and the, everyone in that CFD. So, through the Melleroos, right, that we all had on our houses when we bought them. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is, of course, it's super old infrastructure. Then on top of that, you got all the sewer pipes and everything else. And so, and here we are. I mean, here we are today, and some money's going to have to be spent. We want to try and make it as painless as possible and spread it over as much time as you can. But like Larry said, if you kick it down 2 or 3 years, you just double the price. So some hard choices going to be made, and I like the wastewater operators doing a great job. The guy before I thought did a good job, but the city ran it for 15 years prior to that. Nobody has. I remember when PERC came in, they were complaining like Waterstone's complaining. They were complaining about how everything was all broken and junk and everything else. They did that 10, 14 years ago. And then in comes Waterstone, and nothing got replaced, because you can look at the budget and see that. And they're saying the same thing. So it's not news that there's a lot of junk out there. But I don't think, like, we've kicked it down the road. It's never come to us before to spend the money. So here we are. So, but anyway, I appreciate everyone's input. I think George knows what he has to do, and Kathy knows what she has to do. If you're trying to find some documents you can't find, I have a garage full, so maybe. I'll try and look that up. I think that's it. So with that, we'll move on to committee future reports or future agenda items.
Future meetings.
We can discuss that later on. And
I mean, at this point, we got to see what we get back from this,
Yeah.
and then we can do another agenda and schedule another meeting.
all right, so with that motion, we are adjourned. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Good to see people.